let's see here. Let's see here. All right, so there. I see Mike and I see Doug. So good, we'll get started. I'm not going to wait on Tiffany. I didn't hear back from her. And also, this will be able to, I'll trim it a little bit and we'll be able to watch it again if you need to. So we're going to go over some of the, a few of my photos from the gorge that I really, really liked. We're not going to be able to go, maybe get through most of them, but it's going to be pretty fast paced simply because of time constraints, and I would like to just show you the before and afters of each one of them. So this first shot is my favorite from that sunset, that afternoon we had, because I really, really like this cliff face. All of this detail in here just looked amazing. I absolutely love it. Obviously, what I don't love is the fact that even though my camera was level, we talked about this, the Vista house looks crooked. And I am positive that my level on my camera was saying it was level. But that's one of the problems you have when you're shooting at a longer focal length. Just a very, very small minutia will make things further away seem like they're not straight. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fix that, and I can eyeball it, which is probably what I'll do, is something like that, and then just zoom in, and yeah, that looks a lot better. So I'll call that even. And I usually do my global edits, and then I go into my localized or regional edits, like with masks. So the first thing is my exposure looks really, really good. There's not a lot that I would do here. I might brighten it up just the smallest amount, just so I can pull some more goodness out of here at the bottom. One of the things that I always like to do that works for about, 80% of my landscape photos, if I'm doing a color one, is go down here to calibration and then take this blue primary saturation channel and just watch what happens. And hopefully this will come across on YouTube. When I go up to 100, it really adds some pop to my greens and oranges and yellows. And it really does. It does affect blues. You have to be very, very careful if you've got blues in your image, like a blue sky, because it'll really get a little bit heavy-handed. And if that's the case, I would go under HSL saturation and I would just drop that blues just a little bit just to make sure. But in this case, I don't need to do that. It looks absolutely fine on my monitor as is. But I love what it's doing down here. The next thing I would look at is the crop. Do I like everything? So my subject is the Vista house. I love these cliff faces. I love Beacon Rock, and I'm going to love this sky when I get done with it. But there's a lot of nothingness down here at the bottom of my image that's really not helping. It's not adding anything whatsoever. Maybe a little bit of scale as to how tall that is, but I think I can get by changing this to a 4x5. And I'm just going to play with this crop just a little bit like that. And I think I want right in there. And I think that looks pretty good. It still shows, maybe not quite that much. I might even just take this padlock off, and I'm going to do what I want with it. Just make that a little bit longer. Yeah, I like that. So I'm going to leave it right there. The next thing, since I've got this done, the basic global edits, then I'm going to start looking at masking. And so the first thing I want to tackle is the sky. You might be tempted to say select sky, but since this is such an ambiguous, cloudy sky that's kind of touching everywhere, and all of this is light. Remember, your eyes are going to go to the brightest part of the image, and I don't want people to really pay attention to this. The Vista house and this little area right in here is more important. So instead of using select sky, I'm just going to do a linear gradient, and I'm going to pull it down like this. And then I'm just going to drop my exposure on it just a little bit like that. And then the big thing I want to do is I'm going to go into presence, and I'm going to use some dehaze. Now watch, if I go crazy with it, it's awful. Don't do that. But if I pull it back and I just want to bring some detail out of that sky, that's what I'm going for, is pulling some detail in the clouds. And to do that, It's going to be a little bit of dehaze, maybe just a little bit of clarity in it as well. And then back here in the tone, right here, I might be able to just help out by just bringing not the exposure, but the highlights down just a little bit like that. And I think that that shows off the whiter clouds, and it brings detail back in all of this, and it kind of highlights Beacon Rock a little bit better as well. And I want to make sure you guys are still with me. And yes, excellent. So now that I've got the sky taken care of, I think that looks pretty good. And I always like to use a before and after. I like to see where I'm going, because it's easy to overcook something if you're not sure how far you've come. So using that backslash key, I can see before. This is telling me it's before, and then after. So I like that a lot. Now this is the best way, and I'm going to do this to I'll probably do this to almost every image that I do, and this is by far the best way to add a vignette, and that is we're going to add a radial gradient. You need to zoom out so you can see your whole image. I'm going to start here in the middle, and we're going to make this huge. A lot of people don't realize that your masking is not constrained by your canvas or by your photograph. It can be much, much larger. So I'm going to make it gigantic like this, and you'll notice that I've got this feather. This is the feather area. From this inner circle to this outer edge is where it's going to feather. This is the important part, to have the corners are going to be, you want them where the vignette's going to be. Because what I'm going to do to this mask is I'm going to invert it. Click right here and invert it. So if you see where that pink is, now watch when I move the mask around, you can see that pink coming in. Now watch what happens when I drop my exposure. And if I do this, now it's really evident what I'm doing. You can see how, it's where it's being affected. This gives you 100% control over vignette. If you want it to be closer in, you can bring it down a little bit, right? Like that. If you want it to be, tighter on the sides, you can do that as well. But the key for a good vignette is look up here at my thumbnail in this left-hand corner at my navigator. See how obvious it is? That's awful. Don't do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring it back out. It needs to be very, very subtle, and I need to cut off my email client so it doesn't make that noise for us. So we still need, it needs to be subtle. That's the key. We can also adjust it by using the feather over here. So right now it's feathered at 50%, and we can bring it however we want. So again, it's fine control that this doing a vignette in this fashion allows us to have. So I think, and again, looking up here at this one, it might be a little heavy up here on the left, and if it is, I can just do subtract, brush, and then I can just kind of paint that away. And boom, there we go. And then I'm looking up here, and maybe I'll undo that. So I'm going to go back here to my history. I'll just click back one, and let's make this a little, my brush, we'll say subtract, brush, and then I'm going to change this flow to a lot less so that I'm not doing quite as much. And I'm gently going to just touch in here just to kind of not overdo it. And again, I'm referring back to this navigator up here just to see how well what it's doing. All right. I think that looks pretty good. And again, this is not like maybe a final edit. This is the real quick YouTube streaming live edits. So the next thing I would do is I'm going to go in. Let's go into 100% here. And sorry about that. Let's see here. Let's go to 100%. We're going to get rid of this orange and these two cars, and unfortunately there's no way to do it in a good way in Lightroom. It's impossible. So what we're going to do now that we've got the bulk of our edits done is well, let me do one other thing. I'm just noticing what I want to do is I'm going to do a radial gradient. I'm going to bring it down into here, and I'm going to add some contrast down in here, because I love that I love this whole cliff face. I really, really like that. And I might actually even bring up the highlights just a little bit on that cliff face as well. Let's see what happens if I adjust those whites. And maybe bring those shadows down just a little bit. And then maybe go into presence, and let's add just a little bit of texture. There we go. So now that I got that done, then I'm going to right click, edit in Photoshop. And I'm going to show you a very, very fast way to get rid of those. We're going to get rid of those cars, and we are going, actually we'll be able to fix that fence, that orange, in Lightroom when we get it back. So let's go over here to Photoshop. Okay, here's our image. Always duplicate your image in Photoshop. You can do that by dragging down to this little plus icon. Here's your layer palette, or you can use Control or Command J. Command J if you're on a Mac, Control if you're on a PC. That will duplicate your layer. That way you've got some insurance in case things go sideways, because Photoshop is a destructive, for the most part, it's a destructive editing workflow. When you change pixels and save it, those pixels are changed forever, unlike in Lightroom. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in to 100%. We're going to get up here to these cars, maybe even get in a little bit closer. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this, probably just use my lasso tool, and I'm just going to select this car like this. Okay, and I'm going to always try just doing a fill, content aware fill, and see how well that works. Not that great. So I'm going to go Command or Control Z to undo that, and I'm going to go Edit, Content Aware Fill. And the reason I do it this way is because if I do it this way, I can really control where Photoshop copies from. I don't want them to copy from any of this, and because Photoshop is not super smart all the time. And so what I'm doing is by erasing this green area, I am telling Photoshop exactly where I want it to copy from and where not to copy from. Okay, and that's looking a little bit better. It's pulling, let's see. Let's add, we can do a plus, and we can actually add a little bit more we want it to draw from. And that's already looking better than what we did, what we got out of the other. Okay, so we're going to say, from here, we're going to say apply to a new layer. That's important. And we're going to say OK. And we got that. Now we're going to fix this post in just a quick second. It's super easy. But the next thing we're going to do is make sure we go back to our background copy, because this is this here is what we just did. So if I cut this off, you'll see it. That's what we just did. All right. And what I'm going to do is make sure I'm on the background layer. I've still got the same tool attached, and I'm going to come over here to this little red car, and I might as well, I don't know how well that's going to work, trying to get rid of those two people, but we're going to do that, and we're going to do the same thing, except we're just going to bypass it, go right to Content Aware Fill. We're going to erase every place that we know is not the right thing to choose. We don't want any of this. We don't what we're telling Photoshop is don't copy from here. We want it to copy stuff that's we know is gonna match. And we really don't even want these trees. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to, there we go. That's a little bit better. A little bit better. Okay, so we say all right, and we're gonna do that. So let's fix this lamppost now. So what we're gonna do for that is, I'm going to take this layer here. See what's the easiest way to do it. Easy way to do it is to let's put this on the top so we can see it, because this is all it's visible from the top down. So I just moved it to the top so we could see it. And what I'm going to do, and there's many ways to do all of these things, right? And so there's no wrong way to do it. And I'm just going to select very, very quickly this post. Let's do it. Let's do it even faster. Don't really care. We're going to do like this. Control C. And then we're going to pull this back. And we are going to Control V. And that'll put it on a new layer. So there's our post back. And then we're just going to mask it. We're going to hit that button. It's going to put a layer mask on it. We're going to use a black brush. Again, I'm going quick, guys. If you don't know layer masking, just go back and watch this later. and you'll be able to follow along. You can pause it and find out where I'm going. But boom, there's our pole back, right? I just masked it back in. Okay, and then over here, it is what it is. So we're going to use we're going to fix it up a little bit using the clone tool. And I'm going to take the advantage of having this tree. And let's see here. I want to, this is what I want. So here, and we're going to make sure we are on a new layer. So I've got a new layer going on. And I am going to, you're not seeing anything, but I'll show you where it's going in just a second. We're going to put this up here at the top. So there it is. Okay, so I'm okay with this. This is okay, and I think to make this simple, to move this ahead, what I'll do is I'm going to take all these things that I've done, and I'm going to basically create a new. I'm going to stamp it all together. All of this goodness is going to go together. So I select this one, and then I shift click, and then we're going to just right click and say merge layers. So now all of that has been destructive. There's no way to go back and I can go back through the history, but I can't, when I save it, there's no way to go back and undo what I just did. It's basically sandwiched it all and merged all of those layers together. So I'm going to take here and I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller, and I'm going to just do a little bit of cloning to maybe make these steps just a little bit better. Just like this. Because you got to remember, people that are looking at this, if you were going to, do anything with this photograph, I am at 700%. So if I zoom out to there, that's pretty good. I think that looks fine for 5 minutes of editing. Now this guy here to take care of this other person standing there is fast enough. We can just easily do one of these, and I think if we do Shift F5, I am hoping that would, nope, it still didn't fix it, didn't do a good job. So again, we'll just do edit content, oops, let's see, and edit content aware fill, and we don't want any of this, we don't want this tree, we don't want any of this. What we do want is more of that wall. Maybe some of this here. Maybe that'll help fill that in, or maybe not. Sometimes all that AI stuff, this is where AI, I think, is eventually going to make editing faster and easier for us. So I'm not going to do it. It's awful. It's a struggle bus. So what I'll use is the clone tool, and I'll zoom in like this, and what I'm going to do is knock this out very, very, there's more than one way to do, there's a lot more than one way to do many things. And so by using this clone tool, there we go. And when we zoom out, or even at 100% here, good to go, looks good. I'm going to just ignore this person, and we're going to fix this little bit in Lightroom. Okay, so when we're done with our edits in Photoshop, all we have to do is go File, Save, and it's going to make the save. We can watch that up here. If you have a lot of layers, it's going to make a gigantic file. I always recommend, when you're relatively sure of your edits in Photoshop, that you can either merge down or at least kind of get rid of unneeded layers so that your file doesn't grow to this ginormous huge file. So here we go, it's done. So we'll go back into Lightroom and let's go to 100%. There we go. And that looks pretty good. The car is gone, the person's gone. So let's take care of this orange ugliness. So what we're going to do over here is we're going to say Object, Select Object. And what we're going to do is make our brush small. And we're just going to take and paint over this orange and see how well it does. Oh, look at that. Absolutely nailed it. That is a good good tool for selection. Works really well most of the time. So what we're going to do, if we pull all the color out of that gray, and then we make it darker, like that, and we can go in, let's go in a little bit tighter. We'll go to 200%. Okay. And let's see, we need more contrast or a little less. Let's do this. Okay. And we're going to add a little bit. We use my brush tool, and we're going to add a little bit more to what we got going on here. Okay, let's up my flow because I was way down. We're going to undo what we don't like. We can subtract it. Okay. And again, I would take a lot more time than what I'm doing now to get it perfect. But these are the broad strokes that I would use. You can also do this in Photoshop and do the same kind of idea. My thing is that I don't want to try to do a content-aware fill. There's no fence to draw from. And without a fence to draw from, trying to create that fence is pretty difficult. So something like that, and again, I would spend more time, but I got many other photos to go through. So let's just take a look at what it looks like here. You know, it's definitely better, right? And again, if I do it before, now this is only going back to my Photoshop version. So this is the original one here before. Okay, and then over here for my Photoshop version. So that one's pretty much done. Let's go to the next shot. I loved the stained glass in here, and so let's take and see what I can do with this. First thing I want to do is I want to straighten it up again. Big moves. So go to transform. We're going to go full because I want this to be perfectly square. I want to make everything vertical and this way, and if it's leaning, I want to straighten it up as best as possible. So just by going here and clicking on full, it did a really good job. So once that's done, I probably want to lighten it up just a small amount, something like maybe that. The next thing I'm going to do is I want to select these windows because I'm going to do some things with them. So go here into your mask, select object, and let's just, well, I don't know, I can maybe go to 50%. All right, make my brush a little bit bigger. Make sure everything looks good here, and here we go. So we're just going to take and paint in here, and hopefully Lightroom is going to, we're going to add to that. Let me move down. So that's the problem when you when you're not quite, you don't have enough space to do it all. You have to kind of add to it, but that's all right. I'm going to keep on going like this. All right, doing a good job. Did great. So we're going to go over here to the second one, and I'm going to zoom back out just a little bit. Let's do 33%. Okay, and we're going to say add, because I want all of these to be the same. So I'm not going to make 3 different masks for the 3 different windows. I want one mask for all 3 of them. So I'm adding to the mask. So that way when I make adjustments, I only have to make it once, and it's going to affect all the masks, if that makes sense, okay? So, and again, I kind of went outside the lines because I'm going quick. And let's see how it does. Lightroom knew I was stupid, and it's amazing how good it is sometimes versus how poorly it does on other things. Oops, I needed to do add object. Okay, so object, when you're doing add object, it's looking for hard edges and things. It's not going to do, it may not do a good job on things that are really fine detail, but when you've got like this window that's got a really hard black border around it, boom, it does a pretty good job. All right, so now I want to take and fit it back in the window. Now I'm going to take and play with this. And let's see what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to brighten it up just a little bit like that. And then we're going to go into here into color, and then we're going to saturate it like that. Because I want that green was real. I thought it was very, very vibrant. I don't find that to be out of the realm of realism. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to go into tone, and I want to bring out some of those highlights up on the top of that. So I'm going to take my highlights and I'm going to go this way. I'm not. I'm going to make a new mask up here at the very, very top to do that, I think. So what I'll do is go here into detail and maybe just try, presence. I was looking for dehaze. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I like that a lot. So now that I've got that taken care of, I'm going to zoom in to 100%. And I want to get rid of these little pipes, which are awful. And so Lightroom does a good job on simple things. So I can just click on that. And it's using the healing brush. And it actually picked a good spot to go from. And I'll take and click on this one. And it did a good job on that one. And then I want to take care of this crack, which I don't like. So I'm going to just paint over that. And I like that, and I'm going to paint over this because I don't care for that. There we go. And let's go back into fit to 100%. Okay, then I'm going to go up here to the top. And I'm going to get rid of this Sentry camera. Now this one, probably not, I don't know. We'll see what Lightroom does. And no, Lightroom was dumb. So we're going to move this over here and see if we can't make it find something that works. Okay, so I can live with that for a quick edit. And then this is orange rusty stuff. We're going to do something about that. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to do in here. And I'm going to tell Lightroom, don't be dumb. There we go. Okay, this over here is way too, I'm not caring for this white. Again, your eyes are gonna go where it's really, where it's those bright parts, and we want to not have that. Okay, so like that. So let's go back to fit, and let's do before, after, before, after. I think these steps down here are a little bit too bright, so I'm gonna add a linear gradient down here, something like this. I'm gonna go to tone, drop the exposure just the smallest amount, and have it fall off down here because these up here are already kind of dark. Okay, like that. And then I'm gonna crop it just a little bit because I want it perfectly symmetrical. So I'm gonna bring this down just a small amount. There we go. Something like that. And this is showing me here, that blue highlight is telling me that my blacks are crushed right there, but I really don't care. It's a very small amount. And that's absolutely okay. So that would be an edit on this one. That was pretty fast. And again, I would go back in and I would clean up some more of these cracks. I would do some dodging and burning maybe on these steps. Something like, I can show you real quick what I would do on one of them. So what I like about the steps, notice how the leading edge of it is a little white. It's a little lighter than the rest of the step. So I would accentuate that. And the way I would do that is I would take and I would create a mask here, and then I would do a brush, and I would make that brush pretty tiny. And I would probably make the flow about 50%, and then I would just click and just go across the whole edge of that step, and then just bring that exposure up just a small amount like that. And every time, I could just, again, you can add to the mask so that you don't have 20 masks for one thing that's all going to get the same effect. There we go, just painting over it, that leading edge. And you'll see it, because I'm not going to do it over the whole thing. I'm just going to do it over part of it, so you'll be able to see the difference that this makes. Let's not use that as a difference. That was pretty ugly. All right, so let's go fit. And if I turn this mask off, and you can dial that back up. It's probably a little much. So you can dial it. See, you can dial it in with the amount right here. So again, realistic. You just want to help guide the viewer's eye into your photograph up to that stained glass that was so awesome. Okay. So is anybody got any questions as we're going? Anybody now, or I'm going to keep on rolling? I will try to do my best to glance over here in the chat window and answer those questions. But all right, let's take a look at how much time we got. We got about 20 minutes, and I want to give a little bit of time for some questions at the end if we need to. And I like this shot and this one. I think I'm going to go with this one. Now, Mike, who was with us on the workshop, already shared some of his images, and did a really nice job. So this was across the gorge, and the thing that I was drawn to in this was this saddle in this brightest part of the mountains and all the snow. I was also drawn to all of the layers. We have a dark layer of trees, then we've got this bright green grass, and then we've got some more trees, then we've got the white mountains, you know, snow, and then we've got these dark clouds that were really ominous. I just really like that layer, even though there's not a, we use those layers as a leading line versus like a stream or a physical line, so to speak. And then we do have the brightest part of our image, which is right here in the middle. So this is already, I hit auto settings, so let me undo that. This is here's right out of camera. This is what we should have started with, is this. And again, the first thing I usually do is I look at cropping. And there's a lot of sky. And while the sky is kind of cool, I think it's a lot. And so what I would do is I would go in here and do a 16:9. I like that ratio better. And then I'm looking at keeping the saddle in the center. And then I'm like, well, do I have everything I need on the sides, or is there stuff that's not that interesting? And to be honest, that's okay. I might even look at what would a 2x6 look like. So this is a pano. This is a standard panorama size. Even though this is a single photograph, you can still make it a panorama. And so I might actually edit this as a pano, a 2x6 versus a 16:9. I do like the clouds, but it's a lot of them. So let's see what this would look like. Okay, so this is right out of camera. The first thing I'm going to do is I want to brighten up the center area where I want to draw that viewer's eye is here. It's going to help get them into the photograph. And then I want to add a little bit of contrast to that. My highlights are in really good control. You look up here to histogram. Excuse me. And the histogram is looking really good. It's a little dark. I'm absolutely okay with that because it was at sunset. A lot of people think their photographs, all need to be, if you shoot in automatic mode, then your photos are going to come out way too bright most of the time because your camera's trying to make it way overexposed. Not overexposed, but make it way brighter than it needs to be. Okay, so something like that I think pretty good. Now you notice up here in my thumbnail that I've already kind of got a vignette going on. Since the image was dark, overall it was kind of dark, and by putting that brighter radial gradient in the middle of the image, it did my vignette for me. So now this is kind of my vignette by brightening the center up like that. Let me do a little bit more like that. Okay. And there's not a lot left to do. What I might do is, I'm going to do a couple other small things. Since it was sunset, and there was a little bit, the light was a little golden, a little yellow, and and you can see it here in the background, it's just a little bit yellow. So I'm going to help that out a little bitty bit, and I'm going to put a radial gradient back in here. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my highlights and maybe bump those just the smallest amount, and then I'm going to go into color, and I'm going to go into my temperature, and I'm going to make it a little yellow. Don't go crazy. That's awful, but you back it off. And you don't want it to be green. It's starting to turn a little bit green as well when I add that yellow, because there was when you pull that blue out. So I'm going to add a little bit of magenta to help offset that. And it's easy to know which way to go because it tells you right here. Here's your blue, here's yellow, here's green, here's magenta. You look at your color, and if it's green, then go away from green, right? And if it's magenta, then go away from magenta. And what you're trying to do is, with a color calibrated monitor that's good, you should be able to dial that in to get the look that you want right back there. And so something like that. All right, so that's before, without the mask there, and that's with the mask, without it, with it. And it's subtle, but it's definitely giving it a little bit of a lift, and it's giving it a little bit of color from the setting sun off of those clouds. Okay. All right, let's see. Watching my time so I don't waste anybody's, and we'll keep on going. Let's see. And again, I think this is pretty good. I might actually do, as I'm looking at this, it's really dark over here on this upper left. And so another thing to remember is when you make your gradients, if you do like a radial gradient, remember what I said about you don't have to have it on the image. You can have it up here so it's feathered. And so if I go here and I wanted to just maybe lift those shadows just a little bit, or the exposure just a little bit on that because it's so dark. See, I can feather that in and put it where I want it. And I don't know if I want it anywhere like that, so I don't like any of that, so I'm going to delete it. And I'm going to do this via a brush. So I'm going to say brush, make it bigger, and I don't want it I want it kind of light. I'm just going to just do this, and that way I can just very gently just pull that up, because I know it was dark, but it's just a little bit dark for my taste. So now I'm noticing here in the center where I put that gradient that it's too evident. So again, this is a great way to tell if you're over editing or you're doing too much and you're not doing a good job of blending. So you can kind of see exactly where I put that radial gradient if you're looking up here. It might be hard to see on YouTube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this bigger, and I'm going to feather it more than 50. See, if I weren't to feather it, you could see it for sure. So I'm going to bring it down, feather it to like 70 or so, like that. And then I'm actually going to go back to my color tab, and I'm going to make this just a little bit smaller. Let's just do 3, like that. All right. Because remember, when you're feathering, every effect that you do is going to be at the most, whatever you set it at. Like these values are going to be the most in the center. Once it gets to this feather point that you set, you can watch that this inner circle. See, there is no inner circle because my feather is 0. That means the effect is being applied 100%. Throughout the entire gradient, 100%. If I bring the feather all the way almost to 100, you can see that it starts to feather almost immediately. So you pick a point, and you can kind of watch it happen of where you want that feather to fall. how you want it to just roll off. And then again, I'm looking up here to see how well that's doing. All right. Okay. And besides that, I might go in and make some small touches to down in here. Just briefly, what I might do is, let's see. And again, once you select those, and the idea is just to make them pop just a little bit. So let me turn that off. Because all of those little pops of luminance that you're adding, just the slightest amount on those white trees with those buds, is going to help draw that eye. It's going to be places and things for eyes to land on as the viewer is going through it, and everything is going to have some contrast, lighter darks, and that's going to help again get that viewer, make it an interesting photograph to look at with all those layers that you're going to do. So let's take a look at a couple of the waterfall photos real quick. I like this one a lot. This was on the bridge, obviously. I love the fact that the water's coming straight down at me. This is at 1/5 of a second. That was the shutter speed that I kind of landed on. It's where I liked. F11. Notice my ISO is at 1000 though to get this depth of field, this shutter speed, ISO 1000, which is a lot. But let's see what we can do with this photograph. The first thing you'll notice is we've got the part of the bridge, somebody's arm over here. Notice that I've got the white V of nothingness, a little bit of that up here at the top. Turn that off so you can see it. So that's pretty ugly. We need to fix that. And we need to fix this. And as we zoom in, let's see here. Take a look at everything. And that's pretty bad. That's ugly. That is not good. Not good at all. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to get rid of all of this. And the best way to do that is in Photoshop. So I'm going to do that very, very quickly. So right click, edit in Photoshop, because this is a big thing to get rid of. And I'm going to do that first so that when I make my edits, it's I'm making edits on a photograph that has all of those items that I don't want anymore replaced, because these are big, not small. These are really big items. So I'm going to come over here to I'm going to just get rid of his arm, this arm first, right? And I'm going to again try Shift F5 and see what happens. And it didn't do a good job again. So we're going to do Command Z, bring that back. And I forgot the most important lesson that I just tried to teach you guys, and that's always duplicate your layer. So I'm going to duplicate the layer, zoom in at 100%, come over here to where this guy's, where this arm is, do this, edit, content aware fill, okay, and see it's pulling from the dumbest places possible. I don't even know where it's getting it from, because that's, it's awful. I'm rooting for AI to come along and fix these problems. That's better. Okay, that'll be good enough, and I'll be able to fix the rest in with the clone stamp. So I'm going to come in here and grab the clone stamp tool. And I'm going to just very, very quickly fix this. We can just do this right here. Maybe make my brush bigger. Hang on. What I need to do is I put it on a different layer. So I'm going to just merge these two real quick. There we go. All right. Resample like this. That looks much, much better than what Photoshop was trying to do. Now, what we'll do is we'll get rid of this, and we're going to hope for the best. So I'm going to just grab this whole board like this, and we're going to go Edit, Content Aware Fill. And actually, Photoshop did a pretty good job right here. I'm going to crop a little bit, so I'm just going to say absolutely okay. And it put it on its own layer, which is fine. I'm going to do this, and we're just going to merge these two layers down like that. Okay. And again, this looks okay. I'm okay with the way that looks. Let's go up here to the top and fix this V of nothingness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to actually, instead of taking something away, I'm going to create something. I'm going to use my clone stamp tool up here at the top, and I'm going to make my click here. Let's get my clone stamp tool. Maybe not quite that big. That looks good. And what I'm going to do is I am just going to replace This is way fast, guys. I would definitely take a lot more effort and time to make this better. All right, but I'm just showing you the broad strokes again on this, because you don't want things to be repeating. And you have to be careful about where you sample from so that it fits. And again, I'm going really, really fast. I should get something from way over here. Something over here. And okay. And again, this is pretty quick. It's sloppy, but I just wanted to show you that's one way to get rid of that void of death. And what I try to do, and that I taught you guys at the workshop, is not to even include that. As you can see, when it's zoomed out like that, it looks pretty good. And there's not a big issue with that. So now that I've got all of this removed and all those heavy lifting done in Photoshop, all I need to do is I'm going to save this. Save. Like that. And once this gets to 100%, it'll go back into Lightroom. $72. Let's go. I need a faster computer. I just bought a fast computer, so I don't know. There we go. All right, so here we are back in Lightroom. Now I'm going to go ahead and crop it just a little bitty bit. And again, you can help get rid of that top part of your image like that. And I'm going to accentuate, instead of doing a vignette the way that I showed you, I'm going to do it just the same way, but I'm going to do it in pieces so I can have more control. I'm going to do one on each side. So I'm going to bring this, always remember to reset your feather to 50. Okay. And it's going to give you a lot more control. And then a radial gradient for this side of the waterfall. And we're going to tilt it a little bit to keep it, I don't want it to be in the water. Again, that's my leading line. I don't want it to be affected by that, so we're going to drop that as well. Like that. And then, let's zoom out a little bit more, and we're going to create one more mask. This is at the very top. And the beauty about doing it this way is I can just kiss it. Just gently bring that in. and have such fine control over where I want that, how dark I want it, and where I want it to start and feather it. Just gently, gently. If I don't want it over here because I've already got this a little bit dark, all you have to do is click subtract, brush, and then just paint where you don't want it to go. Just make sure your flow goes back. If you want to do it quickly, just send your flow back to 100. Okay. Let's take a look at this before and after, before, after, before, after. That looks, it's looking pretty good. Actually, not a whole lot more that I would do. I might even, now that I've got this done, let's see what it looks like if I just put a main, let's put a vignette over the whole thing like I would normally do. Let's see what that looks like. Because I think, again, make it really big, invert it. And again, I'm looking over here at my little thumbnail to see if it looks natural. And I think it does. Just like that. So let's fit the image. Boom, there we go. I would run this through denoise. Unfortunately, I did not do that at the beginning. And if I use this on a raw file, so let's go back here very, very quickly. Here's the raw file. You'll notice that in Lightroom, you've got this noise reduction denoise. It only works on a raw file. So you would have to do this first, and I'm not used to doing my noise reduction first. I'm used to doing it when I'm done with everything else. But it does a really, really good job of getting rid of the noise in those shadow areas, especially when you're shooting at a higher ISO. If I can change my balance, change it up here to like the 50. And if I go to, let me find a place it's zoomed in a lot to show you the noise. Will it zip over to an area if I click here? No. I have to move manually and just struggle bus it way over here. So I'm trying to get to a place that's got some dark shadows where you can really see it. Maybe in here. So that's before, after. You can see how those pixels move. There's a little bit of color noise. It's not too bad. And if I just click enhance, it's going to take that file, apply that denoise to it, and create a new DNG. Okay. And I'll just show you my last photograph right here. This one is much better. I like this view of the waterfall in a lot of ways simply because it doesn't have that big swath of nothingness at the top. This is the raw file. And I will show you my final edits that when I took my time. Let me get rid of these. So let me show you these very quickly. So here's the image of the stairs that I really liked. Here is the here's an image that I didn't get a chance to edit. I actually lit these lamp posts. This is at the Forum, the Vista House. Here is the pano of the mountains, and there's the waterfall after I did my final edits on that one as well. So guys, anybody have any questions? I see Mike says, when you save from PS and go back into Lightroom, are you still working with a raw file, or does Photoshop change the file type? No, when you go from Photoshop into Lightroom, it turns it into whatever you tell it. It'll usually be a PSD, or it will be a TIFF file. And you can go under Edit, Preferences, and External Editing, and you can set it right here. So right now, when you do Photoshop, it's going to save it as a PSD. And you can change it to a TIFF. I like PSD because if I do save it with all those layers, it's going to save all of those layers. Okay. All right. Anybody else have any other, oops, I'm sorry, you probably couldn't see that. I didn't have it in the right spot of my monitor. There we go. So when you're here under external editing and preferences, you got Photoshop 2023, You got the PSD format, which is what I have it selected at. You could also select TIFF. But once you pull it into Photoshop and then back into Lightroom, it creates a new file. That's why it's super important that when you right click and say edit in Photoshop, when this little box comes up, this is important. If you select edit original, that means your original file is going to get pulled in and it's gone forever. When it comes back into Lightroom, there's no getting it back to a raw file or going back in your editing at all. But if you edit a copy with the Lightroom adjustments, it basically takes your raw file with all of your every adjustment that you've made, all of your masks, your basic adjustments, your tone curve, anything you've done, pulls that into Photoshop. You make your edits there. Then when you save it, it saves it as a PSD or a TIFF, depending on what you told it in your preferences. And then you've got both files right next to one another. Okay, so if I turn my filters off, you'll be able to, let me say cancel. You'll be able to see that I've got all of these pictures right next to one another. So here there's my raw file. You can see the swath of nothingness, the guy's arm, and all of this mess here, right? And then I've got a virtual copy that's of the same file. But then I've got an edit.psd. It's telling me right up here that this has been edited and it's a Photoshop document. Okay. And then the other one is edit2.psd. This is the second time that I edited the photograph. This is the one I did tonight, and that's the one I did before. So on the one that I took my time on, you can see up here at the top, looks a lot better than the one that I was really, really, really fast on and just kind of slapped it up there when I was doing that. And I would still probably not include the top. It's simply because I don't think you have to have it for this waterfall. All right. So does anybody have any other questions? All right. Let me see if I can make something. Let me scoot this just a little bit like that. All right, guys. Appreciate it. I hope you guys learned something. This will be saved, and if you get it to get to it from my YouTube page, instead of videos, you have to go to live. There's some choices on my landing page of my channel. And if you click on live, it will take you right to right to all my live videos, and you can replay this. So you can go slower and see what I did. And if you have any questions, feel free to text me or email me, and I'll be happy to help you as best I can. So if nobody has any other questions, I would also appreciate any feedback besides the fact the link didn't work when I first did it. Any feedback on the smoothness of the video, the audio quality, the video quality, anything like that. If you had any issues or any comments on it, I would love to know, because I'm trying to iron out these issues when I do these live streams so that it goes a lot smoother than it just did. All right. Good deal. Thank y'all so much, and we will talk to you later.